Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Weekly Design Journal. Looks like I might be the only person here tonight because we changed from our usual night, so I'm not too surprised. A lot of folks will probably see this later um, in the its recorded form. So I'm just going to go ahead and get going. Now, let me pull out the chat just in case I get somebody here who ends up watching live, which is probably not going to be happening tonight, but that's okay. Let me pull this over. Yeah, so tonight's going to be a little bit more journal than design, especially if there aren't a lot of other folks here to talk about some of our weekly design challenge. And it's also probably going to be a little shorter than normal. So, here is what's happening tonight. First off, in Cool Name RPG, it's been a long week, folks. There's been a lot going on, have a lot on my plate at the moment. And I am it's having a heck of a time keeping up with everything. Oh, Scott Gardner's here. Hey, good to see you, Scott. So I'm not alone. It's fantastic. Yeah, I've had a lot on my plate. Aside from personal stuff, because I've got two kids. One's graduating from college. One's graduating from high school. It's been some crazy weeks. We've had graduation ceremonies and such. And I also, you may or may not know this. You probably assume it. I actually have a day job, and it has nothing to do with role playing games or gaming. Everything I do for Cool Name RPG, everything I do for Etaltis happens outside of my normal day job. So this is what I fill like every second of my waking hour with are these role-playing game projects. So it's a huge part of what I do. Now, a couple of things that I want to talk about, though, is like I said, it means that there's a lot going on, and I am feeling the weight of all of this week. So a few things I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about our news, what's going on, what we've got happening. I'm going to be talking a little bit about core activity, core play, which is, I think, a super important piece. And then we're going to dip into dice mechanics. What I'm not going to do is tackle our weekly design challenge, partly because I'm just not ready to at this point. In terms of prioritizing things to get the work done, I had to deprioritize that. And that's one of the things when you talk about a design journal, that's one of the realities of working on a project like this. You have to sit there and make a clear set of goals and identify what's the most important work, so that if you have to drop something, it's not going to delay your project, it's not going to delay your work, it's going to keep you moving. And so that was one of the things that I pushed. I also think I'm going to be moving to a less than weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. I'll probably put it in a survey that I'm putting together to come up soon, but finding out whether people want the design challenges. It seems like people are getting into it and we have a fun time talking about it, but I also think that we might be just as well off just focusing on cool name stuff and not going too far out there. I do like some of the really different ideas that come out there, because when we're brainstorming about Cool Name RPG, a lot of times we get hung up on the Cool Name RPG part. We get boxed into thinking about what it is we're trying to accomplish here, and we don't let ourselves explore the boundaries beyond the boundaries of that. And so I still like the idea, but we're going to have to make some changes to it. So we're going to tweak that as we go along. In other news, we have our current store right now. We've raised over $1,000 in additional funds to buy art from Russell Marks. He's going to pay him to make more art for us. That's going to go into the Cool Name books. Keep in mind that this is art that's going to be released free, just like all the rest of the content. So it's very cool to have hit that milestone, and we're hoping to do even more as we go along. We're also now starting to really get into talking about mechanics. If you hang out on a Discord group, if you hang out in any of those areas, you're going to find over the next couple of weeks, I believe, seeing a lot of change in the conversation. We're going to be digging into some mechanics. We're going to, especially dice mechanics, I'm going to talk about tonight. And so we're sort of hitting this key phase. I finished a new version of the Tome Requirements, a final version. We're not going back to that unless something is completely wrong. That now is going to be set in stone. I'll be posting that on the Cool Name RPG website, coolnamerpg.com, easy enough to find, or cngh.com. I'm going to be posting that there so that people want to reference back to it, they can. I'll be talking about that in the newsletter and in the Kickstarter page as well. So we have a few different places that we're sharing the information, but we'll get it there if you want to take a look at it. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm finalizing our one sheet design, what I call our design manifesto. This is something that all of our cool name designers, consulting designers recommended, is creating a more tightly summarized one pager that includes things like what is the core activity, what is the core play, what is it that our backers are looking for? And things like um, dig into who our competitors are. Now, note that I'm saying competitors not because we're looking to compete with someone. This has never been about winning any sort of a contest. But we do need to think about what other people are already doing really well. Because if we're just mimicking what's already done, I mean, it might still be cool. Don't get me wrong. That actually, it's not bad. It goes back to my pizza analogy, right? I mean, pizza's great and they're all about the same. And it never hurts to have one more person making a really good type of pizza, even though it's not that different from the other. But we do want to try to hit a niche that isn't really getting hit right now, right? We want to make sure that we're offering something to all the backers that allows them to find this sort of cool new place to go in terms of rules and system as they're playing their games, while still falling into the requirements of being relatively familiar and easy to pick up and that sort of a thing. So we're going to be digging into all of that. Hey, David, good to see you as well. So we've got a couple of people here listening tonight. It's a very small round table of people. So if you have any questions or specific things you guys want to know about, because you've got the entire thing to yourselves, feel free to ask. I'm happy to talk about them. So let me go on from there. I've already said we're not going to do weekly design challenge right now because I wasn't able to prioritize it. What I do want to talk about is I want to talk about the core activity. I keep wanting to say cool activity. The core activity. Now, core activity, the definition of that is the main thing that the players are doing in the game, right? So a core activity might be exploring forgotten dungeons filled with monsters in search of treasure. That could be a core activity. It's a very short and sweet core activity. You can keep it very short. We might want to make ours shorter, but I'm not entirely certain about that. But let me show you what we came up with, and I'm going to go ahead and share a image here so we can work from that. Here we go. Core activity, core play. So our core activity that I've proposed for Cool Name RPG is down-to-earth heroes with a few standout heroic traits or abilities, risking life and limb in action-packed adventures to retrieve valuable legendary artifacts from exotic locations, opposed by powerful enemies, the minions of said enemies, and the natural dangers of the sites they visit. Now, the purpose of every single word in here, every word in here is important, and it's there for a reason. And so I'm going to sort of talk through a little bit about how this is set up here. Okay. Down to earth heroes goes back to one of the key ideas that came out of our last survey in terms of style of play and what people are looking for. Our backers and the respondents, and we got a good response. We got over 110 people responding to that last survey. So out of around 500 or 600 people, that's a pretty decent response rate. All right. Our backers appear to be interested in down to earth heroes. We're talking like the crew of the Firefly. We're talking about Buffy and the Scoobies. We're talking about folks that are fighting down to earth battles and not folks who are working on this sort of epic Justice League type level, right? And hopefully all these, if I ever use nerd terminology that doesn't fall into your sphere of nerddom, let me know and I'll explain more what I mean by these things. But the whole idea here is that they're down to earth heroes. And the other thing is that they have a few standout heroic traits or abilities. Now that means that maybe they can cast spells. Maybe they're like the greatest sword fighter that ever lived. Maybe they are the chosen one who has some special mission and as a result is able to overcome impossible odds. Could be lucky, could be a great con artist, right? They have these special traits. Now, it doesn't mean that these traits can't get bigger and cooler over time. They absolutely could. Or if there other traits could come up to speed with some of those. These are all things that are allowed and possible with this core activity description. It doesn't limit us to that, but it's saying that these are the types of heroes we're playing. Now, the other thing that it says is they're risking life and limb. The reason why I point out that they're risking life and limb is that there was a sense that our backers and all of you guys, when I say backers, I mean all of you, but I know other people could potentially be watching as well, are okay with the game having a certain level of risk and a certain level of grit to it. And when I say grit, I mean things like you don't go from 100 hit points to 1 hit point, take a sleep overnight and just sort of sleep it off and get up in the morning. There could potentially be longer term consequences for injury. In addition, there could be the possibility of death, right? And that's not something that really comes up in movies and TV shows, but it absolutely comes up in books and it absolutely comes up in role-playing games. And so this possibility exists. Note, though, that I don't say there's no way to get brought back to life. Note that I don't say there's no way to heal limb. You can certainly heal, and there could be magical ways to do that. But the point is that there is risk involved. And so when your heroes go out to take on these challenges, they are taking a risk, and in part because they're down-to-earth heroes, and they might be fighting superhuman level threats, okay? So next up, we're looking at them doing action-packed adventures. This is important because this tells us about the pace of play, right? It sounds like folks are looking for a pretty fast pace. Now, when I say fast paced, I don't mean like boom, 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 boom. We just gloss over everything just to keep it moving. But I mean, we can't stop and figure out. I don't perceive most players wanting to stop and say, all right, I've got a 1 second round GURP style, and I'm going to turn one hex facing to the right. That's a little bit different style of play, which I love, by the way, but it's not the style of play that we're shooting for here. We're looking for something that's a little bit more action filled, keeps the story moving, keeps the characters jumping from one exciting scene to the next. Those exciting scenes might not be combat, but they're still going to be cool and exciting and action packed. It also doesn't preclude us from having little downtimes, quiet moments in between, right? Those are things that can absolutely exist. You can have those moments in between, but the adventure itself overall is action based. Now, Scott made a great point that resurrection and enhanced healing might be part of the enhanced advanced rules. Absolutely, right? We might say that at the basic level, we're creating something that, you know, has a risk to life and limb. You're not going to heal overnight. You're going to have a certain level of danger involved. And maybe for advanced, we add in some additional tweaks, right? Because we're talking all along about how the advanced set is now starting to look more like a set of dials that you can turn to tune in the game to what you want it to be. That's a great example of something there. In the end, though, we need to make sure first that we're meeting these goals. And I think that's the point of saying that it could fit into advanced. Now, we also are looking at retrieving valuable legendary artifacts from exotic locations. This is interesting because this is the one area that I felt a little nervous about, a little uncomfortable about, right? Because I'm looking at this thinking that, all right, we're retrieving these legendary artifacts. You know, is that what the whole game is going to be about, is artifact retrieval? But I think that you can kind of go too far down that path when you think about it that way. The reality might be you need to retrieve something valuable in order to achieve some greater goal. Maybe we don't say what that goal is. That goal could be your own personal wealth and glory. That goal could be to help fight some greater monster that you're fighting over the course of multiple adventures. That goal could be a lot of things. And the nature of the artifact is not spoken, right? We don't say exactly what the nature of it is, but it does suggest that there are certain items and objects that have special powers that we're going to include in sort of our core system rules. And so, you know, that's something we're going to need to probably fine tune a little bit to better understand. But I think that that's a pretty cool thing, because what we didn't say is that going on action-packed adventures to pull every last piece of gold out of a dungeon hall, or to kill all the monsters, or to defeat all the bad guys. What we're saying is they're going to retrieve things, and that there's a clear, identifiable goal to the adventure that the characters are trying to accomplish. So I think that that's really important, and it sort of sets the stage for the types of stories and adventures that we're talking about. And I do think that Indiana Jones, Firefly, those are good examples, right? If you think about Firefly, I should have pulled up some examples, and I'm sure you guys would think of some given the opportunity. But, you know, I'm thinking about some of the things that they set out to do. Legendary maybe is misleading, right? Maybe the real term is valuable and legendary objects, or legendary and legendary. I don't know. You guys tell me. But the whole idea here is that it allows us to have a little bit of more flexibility. So we got to look at that one. Exotic locations. An exotic location is someplace that's not your backyard, right? We want places that are cool. We want to adventure in dungeons. We want to adventure in magical forests. We want to adventure in lava fields where there are lava monsters living. Those are the sorts of places that I think people are going to be excited about playing in, not necessarily playing in a normal town or a castle, which could be very cool for a super realistic game, but we want something a little bit more adventurous than that, which calls upon exotic locations that are in themselves almost characters. And then the opposition, powerful enemies, minions of those enemies, and the natural dangers of the sites they visit. I thought that this was really important. First of all, to say there could be one powerful enemy behind the scenes that maybe we don't necessarily encounter directly, but those types of characters, those Saurons, those great dragons, those things are there, those powerful enemies. The Kingpin, if you think about Marvel superheroes, right? But they also have minions. They've got, all their stooges, their warriors that they send out, the monsters that they engage with, the horrible creatures they send hunting you, those sorts of minions. And then the natural dangers of the site. When I say natural, it could be mechanical traps and things. The point is that I probably should take out natural. I'm making a note right now. See, this is the whole point of this, is talking about it helps. The dangers of the sites they visit. So those could be traps, they could be a collapsing ruin, they could be lava fields. Again, cool stuff that you can go up against. And so we've talked a lot about it, but in a short version, it's down-to-earth heroes on action-packed adventures to get certain objects or items from cool places while bad guys try to stop them. Right? That's what we're looking at. Let's see, Scott had some ideas here. Retrieve artifacts from exotic locations is skinnable via settings. Yeah, that's true. Retrieve artifacts from exotic locations. I also wonder if artifacts is not the right word, right? And here's why, is that what if the artifact is a person, right? Does artifact put it too specifically, right? And is retrieve important? I mean, these are the questions that I want to push to the Discord and get folks talking about some more. Is retrieve the right word? Is artifact the right word? Is legendary necessary? Valuable, I kind of like, because it kind of says that you can get wealth from it, but and it also could be valuable in other ways, right? It could be valuable to a war cause, or it could be valuable to the person who asked you to go rescue the person. The king's son or something like that is valuable to them. So so we're going to need to look at that. I'm going to push that out. So that's the core activity and core play I'm looking at. Here's the thing. Those specifics we're talking about aren't important in terms of allowing us to get started on our design work, our actual crunchy design work, on saying, do we, if we look at those attributes we proposed earlier, do they fit this? Will they allow us to play this sort of an adventure? Yes or no? I believe yes, but we're going to talk about that together as time goes on. So I think that this is a very interesting thing for us. I think it's something that we definitely, I'm happy to have this down. I'm happy to have this figured out. I think that we can polish it a little more, but I think we're really close based on the feedback that I'm seeing so far. So that's where we're at with that. Very cool, very exciting to see that coming together, which brings us to the next thing that I'm going to talk about. Is I'm going to talk about dice mechanics. The dice mechanic discussion is fascinating because it's all over the place. We keep having this situation where we end up all over the place in the dice mechanic discussion. And I haven't quite puzzled out what that means, but what I do know is this. One of the pieces of advice that was given to us by Robin Laws was that we might want to consider finding a way to make D20 work, right? He didn't say we had to. He didn't say it was the right choice. But what he said is that the D20 is something that people are going to be exceptionally familiar with. I agree. I personally don't know that I want another D20 game, because I feel like that might be a place where we could be different. But I also don't know if that's the right choice for this project. And so what we're going to end up doing is looking at a whole bunch of different dice mechanics and narrowing it down to 3. And I'm taking those 3 base dice mechanics and I'm building out these short scenarios that we can use those initial attributes for and the goals that we've set out, and just have people play out some very tight mechanical scenarios. Now, keeping in mind that This is not going to include full characters. It's not going to include a full adventure with hit points, but we're going to be doing some cool things like swinging from chandeliers and climbing walls and leaping across chasms and otherwise going through some scenes and making sure that the mechanic we have feels like it's going to pull that off, and then judge those mechanics against one another, because I think this is going to be important for us in a next step to move forward on this. So those are the sorts of things that we're looking at now. Dice mechanics, one of the things that's come up a lot, and it sounds like this is something that would be great to have, and it came up very positively in the survey, is the yes and yes but scenario. And in case you weren't there for that or didn't see it, that means like when you roll, you could have conditional results where yes, you make it, or yes, and you do something especially cool. But you could also have yes, but you kind of collapse the bridge on your way across. So you made it, but the bridge collapsed. So you're going to have a hard time getting back, right? Those sorts of things are very cool. And then you do the same thing with no. People really like that, it seems like. And this whole idea of a conditional result is just got a lot of love to it. And I think that that's something that you don't see in 5th edition, that we have the opportunity to do something that feels different, which is one of our requirements. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at right now, is how can we utilize each of these mechanics to also support a conditional result, because I think that's going to be a very cool way for us to go with this. It's kind of where we're leaning. In fact, what you guys don't know, I don't have it handy, so I'm not going to pull it up. I'm actually already have a basic rule set that I'm writing out with giant gaps in it, but I'm putting in the pieces that we're sort of settling on more or less as we go along, so that I can keep sort of iterating on it. And when we're ready, launch that out for us to start playing with. I don't think we're that far away from it. Now, we had hoped to have people rolling some dice earlier, but we discovered that all of this prep work actually takes a little more time than expected. There was a lot to debate, a lot to talk about, a lot of feedback to unpack, both from all of you and from our designers. But now I think we're past that, and we're to the point where we can start making those calls. So, folks, that's actually it for this week. I'm not going to go much longer. I've talked for half an hour straight, which is, almost half an hour straight, which is a decent amount of time. Like I said, it's been a heck of a week here, but we're still making good progress. In the meantime, I encourage you to take part in the Discord conversations. The link's in the description. It's a great place to be, especially in the channel where we're talking about core activity, core play. I'm going to post those questions that came up during the conversation just now. I'm going to put those in there because I think they're good things for us to talk about. But yeah, it's a very exciting point to be at in this project. So in the meantime, if you have more questions, let me know, post them, tell me what you're looking for. We'll get that done. Another thing that I didn't get to mention is that we're going to have our first focus group where we get some of those folks who are at the hero and immortal levels together to talk in person. If you were going to upgrade to one of those, now's your chance. But over on the page, on the late pledge page. But in the meantime, we're going to get some more direct feedback from those folks. I'm also planning some Q&As, text-only Q&As on the Discord, where we can have some conversations there as well. I might do it on the Discord. I might do it as like a Zoom call. I haven't decided yet what the best way to do this, so I'll be asking you guys about that as well. So that's it for now. Thank you all for listening. Sorry for the delay this week. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to do either. I am at the International Congress of Medieval Studies in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's a really cool event, and I'm going to be there. I don't know what's going on Thursday night yet. Sometimes there's amazing stuff there and sessions, and I may or may not be available. So I'll let everyone know early next week what the plan is for the next design journal. I might just do a recording and post it. I might do a written design journal, or we might just skip a week. We'll see what happens. But that's it for now. Thank you all, and we'll talk more soon.